Welcome to my channel. This is the Miss Universe 2020 recap. I'm Dani Walker. If you're brand new, I hope that you are going to consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the notifications if you enjoy content like this. Thank you so much for clicking this episode. It's brought to you by Rehearsed to Relatable. This is where pageant contestants can learn how to brand themselves and how to stand out in the interview room. And if you want to know more about that, just click the description below. Was this year full of surprises or what? I mentioned this to several people, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned it in past episodes, that this group of contestants was so strong that I really thought it could go anyway. And as I was watching the competition, I was not seeing clear standouts. I could see it go any different way depending on an individual's perspective and what that judge was looking for. I will mention, and you can check this out in another video that I just posted, that the show opening that you saw during the telecast was not actually what happened at the pageant, and that surprised me. The contestants did not actually do an opening number dance like you saw on TV. They just walked out on stage. And if you want to see what it actually looked like at the pageant, then you can check out my part 1 vlog of Miss Universe. It's gonna give you an entirely different perspective of what the show actually looks like. The show obviously had a ton of surprises, but I really was not surprised at the top 21. The women that were in the top 21, I had actually noticed them in the months leading up to Miss Universe, and I had mentioned every single one of them at some point or another in my favorites or as contestants that I was looking out for or who I thought would do well in my other episodes, and that is the first time that that's ever happened on my channel. Usually when I watch Miss Universe, I'm surprised by a contestant or two, but not this year. I understood the top 21. Now, even though I understood the top 21 and I wasn't really surprised by those picks, what I was surprised by was the exclusion of some other countries, and I know you are probably surprised as well. The countries that really surprised me that didn't place in a top 21, and I'm sure many of you out there can agree, are South Africa, Canada, Nepal, Panama, and Romania. Those are the contestants that I have been seeing posted online everywhere that people are really shocked that they didn't place in the top 21, and I was as shocked as you are about that, but I do get it because, like I said, this was an incredibly competitive year. It was not easy to make that top 21, and so contestants were bound to be left out of that top 21. I had more than 21 favorites during this competition, and I know that people are shocked by that, but I think it really goes to show that we can't underestimate the power of that one-on-one interview. And I'll tell you from personal judging experience, I have seen stunning contestants walk into an interview room that had the most boring interviews I've ever seen. And I'll never forget one girl, because I judged the pageant and she ended up winning the overall evening gown award for the pageant, and she didn't make a semifinal. Her interview scores were so low that her winning evening gown score could not save her or get her into that semifinal, and everyone was shocked. I was pretty shocked as well, but then I was like, I totally get it, because her interview, it was boring. Plain and simple. So that can happen to these contestants, especially when it's very competitive. Let's discuss swimsuit. Many of you are wondering why they still wore the cover-ups. I really believe that the reason why they had them on was because of the telecast, because those swimsuits were very revealing, as many people pointed out, and they aren't allowed to show that much skin in the US for primetime TV or even some cable networks. So I feel like that's why they probably kept those on, but no one really knows. I am going to do something very, very difficult for me to do, and this is actually what I do for judging. I am going to separate my personal feelings about my favorites, the contestants that I just feel like should advance. I'm gonna separate that from how I believe they actually performed on stage. Super solid swimsuit performance. I really didn't expect anything less from her here. I loved it. I love the walk, the confidence, but it was just a competitive year, and I feel like that's why she ended up just being overlooked and maybe forgotten, because she was at the beginning of the swimsuit competition. Maybe other people got scored higher just by nature of them coming out later. She was very, very strong coming out, and it's tough to come out right after Colombia because their walks are just phenomenal, bodies, face, everything. And I think Peru really, for me, if I was judging, would have scored a little bit higher. I just like the amount of precision that she had in her routine. Her face is what does it for me, honestly. Her face and her facial expressions. I actually talked to her about this before Miss Universe. I was like, girl, don't worry about your height. Just go in there and focus on your walk, your confidence. You don't have to have a perfect walk to place. They told us that a lot at Miss USA, and I'm sure they're telling the contestants that at Miss Universe. It's not about that, but it really is about the confidence. Also, she's stunning, like I said, but she's super, super fit. My goodness, Maria, your waist. I need her ab routine. Her gaze was everything to me. When I saw that moment on stage, immediately she was in my personal top 10. Her body, the walk has improved so much from her national competition. I see the confidence. I loved this performance. She is so, so stunning, and I talked about this for prelims. I'm not surprised that she made it into a semifinal at all, but I think that she had a lot more energy during her prelims performance, and I think a lack of energy is what prevented her from moving on into a top 10. I had the same feeling about Jamaica. I just thought that she had more energy on stage, but I get it. It's a marathon. She may have literally just been tired or exhausted, or her feet hurt. And friends, that's what happens sometimes in pageants. Sometimes our favorite contestants, they lose a little bit of gas at the end of that pageant, and maybe that happened here. I was there, but I rewatched this performance very carefully, and what I really, really liked about it were her facial expressions. Of course, she was nailing all of those, but she brought the perfect amount of energy and excitement and fun, but she didn't overshoot it. She didn't try too hard, meaning that she didn't fall out of any of her turns. She wasn't falling out of any of her poses. She didn't have any awkward head lifts or anything that was too much or over the top. She really nailed this swimsuit performance. I love her. She nailed this. This to me was very Trump era. That's what I think of when I see her, because I feel like the Trump era queens were on this like next level of facial beauty, and she's got that. But the walk itself, her body, just everything that she was exuding was so confident. USA was consistent here. I thought that she really brought it for prelim swim. She brought it again for final swim. The only thing I really would have changed that I think could have affected the score was at the end, her head was very tilted down, and you really didn't get to see actually that much of her face. It started to become shadowed on stage as a result, so I think that could have potentially changed her placement. Indonesia, what can I say? I love her. I love this performance. Look at the hair flip. I feel like we missed it by a second with the timing of the camera angle. I feel like they didn't quite capture that magical moment of her there, unfortunately. But regardless of that, my thoughts were, why was she not in a top 10? Why? What happened? Loved her. Another contestant that was very, very consistent, but like I've said before, I wanted to see something a little bit extra, and I felt like this performance itself was safe. She just came on, smiled the entire time, and the face was very, very consistent, and the walk itself, the posing, all of that was fabulous. All of that. But I wanted to see her a little bit more present on stage. She nailed swimsuit for me again. That opening look and then how she moved her cover up was beautiful. It was well choreographed. It worked. It looked great. I thought that she had that perfect mixture of sexiness and playfulness, but also she still was approachable to me. She wasn't so fierce and over the top that she would make me feel intimidated, and I loved that. Stunning, stunning contestant, obviously, been one of my favorites, but I think that what she needed to take her to that next level was to clean up the transitions. If you notice here on her turns, I'm definitely a stickler for those things, especially when I'm judging. I want everything to be clean and precise and perfection on stage, and I definitely think that this turn right here would have affected my scoring. I love her so much. When I saw her in this swimsuit performance, for me, I was already thinking of putting her in a top 5 if I was judging. This was just phenomenal. Look at the confidence. First thing I noticed was that she wasn't smiling at the beginning of this performance, and I was like, why, Rabia, you have such a beautiful smile. I love when you smile. And I felt like that's what she didn't have this time, is that she needed to have a little bit more fun. She looked like she was really focused and thinking on stage. And although we do have to pay attention to what we're doing and be very purposeful with what we do on stage, there still has to be that element of, I'm here, I'm having fun, I'm carefree, and you gotta make it look easy, essentially. This side look that she did for the camera was everything for me, and her long strides when she walked really make her walk stand out. And obviously she's incredibly fit, so I mean, there's that, and she's a gorgeous contestant. So this performance performance was killer. She's worked a lot on her walk preparing for Miss Universe. I did put her in some of my best walk video. I think she has a great walk, but what really got me here and what really distracted me was the movement of the cover up with her arms. So I was focused more on the arms and less on her. Oh my gosh, that face, right? Wow, 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 so stunning. I think that the only thing she needed to advance was just a little bit of a happier expression. She threw in a few smiles here and there, but for the most part, it was very, very fierce. And I think sometimes that can come off across to judges as a little bit intimidating. So just soften that look. Amanda knows how to connect with the camera. Wow. She's also precise with all of her movements. Loved that. She really reminds me of Pia in a way because her eyes are very expressive on stage. And that's something that I feel like is more of a natural quality and really something you can't really teach. I don't think my eyes have ever been that expressive on stage, but I feel like it's a skill that she's really honed in that I loved. What a stunner, right? She is literally so gorgeous that she does not have to do much on stage. And she didn't. She was effortless. She was confident. It was just the right amount of everything. I loved it. Immediately, I was, of course, like, yes, put her on to the next level. This performance reminded me of the early 2000s. I feel like contestants used to be a little bit more reserved during the swimsuit competition, and it's grown and it's evolved. And I think that if she had a bit more energy, that could have put her into the next round. So if I were the judge and I had to narrow it down, I can't tell you precisely what my top 10 would be because of the way that they score. They're scoring with whole numbers and decimals, and I've scored like that before in pageants, and I'm telling you, when things are moving fast, it's not easy to remember exactly what you scored each contestant. You can't really go back and go like, wait, what did I score that other girl? This girl I like more. I'm gonna try to score her a little bit higher, but I also want her to be lower than another contestant. That's really, really difficult to do. And I think that that's why sometimes even judges get surprised with the results from their own scoring and we can't really remember all of it. So looking back, I think that where my scores would have landed about, and these are approximates, it could have surprised me, but my top 10 would have been Peru, France, Mexico, Dominican Republic, Indonesia, India, Puerto Rico, Brazil, Thailand, and Costa Rica. That would have been my top 10, I think, with the way that I would have scored. It could have been a little different here and there, but it really, really was a hard thing to narrow down. My heart hurt narrowing down these semifinalists. Those are my thoughts on swim. Let me know who your favorites were, and remember to be kind, friends. The contestants see these comments. Let's support them. Gown was interesting. They announced Jamaica and then it took her a while to come out, so I don't know what happened, but I feel like that might have affected her performance because I felt like she could have had a softer facial expression for Gown, and I feel like she really could do well with that because she is a runway model, and runway models know how to change their facial expressions subtly for the stage, but maybe it was just because she had to rush out on stage. But this gown, you cannot do it justice with the camera. It was incredible on stage. I was like, when she walked out in it, oh my gosh, friends, I wish that you could have seen it in person. It was just incredible under the lights. What an incredibly smooth and elegant performance. This gown, the styling of this look also reminded me of very Trump era queens that you would see in the top 5. It really focused on her facial beauty, but this performance was beautiful. It didn't feel rushed at all to me. It also didn't feel like she was trying too hard. It was just, this pivot look did it for me. When she pivoted and looked at the audience that way, looked at the judges, it was just stunning. I think the hairstyling for this look was perfect. It was perfectly timed with all of her gazes and the way that she turned and how she moved her head during the performance. It was perfect. I loved it. I think she looked more confident here. A lot of people commented that she looked very nervous during prelims for gown, and then others came to her defense and said that she was emotional, and I can totally see that. I don't really know which one is true, but I would like to believe the emotional one was true. So this turn that she did, it was beautiful. I almost wish she didn't have a ponytail though. I didn't feel like the ponytail was necessary or added anything to this look. I feel like she could have done a low bun and it still would have been beautiful. I don't know, personal preference. But this whole walk, the pose at the end is what I loved. The way that she posed in this gown was just perfect for the gown and for her, and she stood out. This gown actually has a phenomenal overskirt. Check it out. I sort of really wanted her to come out in that overskirt. I didn't know that it had one, but it's so phenomenal, and I wish that she would have done what we've seen in the past, which was to reveal it at some point and then you can always get rid of it later. But it was incredible. But also I understand it was so massive, it would have been really difficult to work with on stage, but wow. Wow, she literally blew my mind. When she came out and walked, obviously everybody was excited for her. I mean, they were really, really cheering. She gave me chills for her performance, and I loved her. And in my mind, I thought she was immediately in a top 5. I thought she worked for it. I thought she killed it. I thought she was confident. I loved it. Amanda's gown reminded me of her final gown for Miss Universe Thailand, and I believe it's the same designer too, so that makes a lot of sense. And it was beautiful. I love the ocean waves on it. Her performance was phenomenal, but I think what slightly affected her score would have been at the very end. She sort of wobbled a little bit, and that's not really an issue. That happens in pageants, but it affected her facial expression. And no matter what happens, ladies, if you trip, golden rule, never show it in your face. Wow, 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 wow. Her in this gown with that red lip and the straight hair just blew my mind. I mean, this is one of my favorite looks ever. It's nothing that we really haven't seen before, but it just suited her so well. And that's what I appreciated about it. But the performance was beautiful. But the same thing happened to her that happened to Thailand. And when she got to the end of it, she sort of wobbled. And you can kind of catch it just for like a split second at the very end. And I think that's something that also would have affected her score. Because remember, at the end of the walk is really when they're putting in those scores. They don't score you the second that you walk out. I loved her expression during gown. Her eyes were slightly closed, almost as if the sun were hitting them. It kind of gave that effect to me, which I just loved. It was sort of mysterious and beautiful. And if you really break down her walk, it was perfect. It was phenomenal. She once again did not overshoot it. And I talk about this so much to contestants. Yet you don't have to be the Catriona of every evening gown competition. Now, if you are, that's great, but you don't have to be. You have to do well enough to make a cut. You just need to make it to the next round and then keep proving yourself as you go along the way. And I think that if you really look at it, she had a phenomenal performance here, and it was beautiful and smooth and all of it. Loved it. I loved this hairstyle on her, frankly. I loved the gown. I wish that the gown was in a different color, but she still looked beautiful in it. And I loved the ending pose. I felt like the execution of it was perfect. She nailed this. Once again, a very, very difficult cut. If I removed my personal favorites from these choices, I think I probably would have given my top scores to Dominican Republic, India, Peru, Puerto Rico, and Mexico. I'm pretty sure. Things could have been a little close between some other contestants, but I feel like if I separate my favorites from the actual performances and really hone in on them, it's probably who my top 5 would have been, which is so hard to say. It hurts my heart. So for the top 5, I'm going to talk about both of their answers so we don't have to bounce back and forth. So first we have Mexico, and these were not easy questions. Let me tell you, the audience really reacted when they heard these questions because it's not easy. So they asked her how she would react if she were the leader of her country to COVID. I know that she didn't have this what you would call a mic drop type of answer. The audience didn't go, oh wow, so amazing, so phenomenal. Like, there wasn't really that moment in the audience. But I will say this, the way that she delivered it was excellent. She had a lot of poise when she spoke, and she didn't really stumble over her words. She wasn't too repetitive, and she spoke with compassion for people. And I think that that is what really nailed this question for her, and that's why she did so well. Her next one, she was asked to speak about changing beauty standards. And once again, she gave a very positive and uplifting message. She was encouraging to others. She talked about never allowing anyone else to tell you that you're not valuable. And of course, that's a great message. Now, I think that this answer was actually improved because she spoke in Spanish instead of English. And since that's her first language, I think that it came across a lot better. The delivery was a lot better and smoother for her, and it was excellent. India was asked about that balance between, do you lock down a country or do you think more about the impact it'll have on an economy? Once again, not an easy question, and honestly, there is really no right or wrong answer to that. Hindsight is 2020, and every single country has experienced something different. So I really think that you should tailor your response to COVID depending on your country. But India talked about the impact that it had in India, which obviously has been just massive and just breaks my heart even thinking about that. And I feel like she was doing pretty well, but the answer was very safe, and that surprised me just because I feel like she is such a strong speaker, and I thought that she would have been a little bit more poignant in her answer. Next, she was asked to speak about free speech and the right to protest. And I think that she had a really beautiful opening, but then as she realized that her time was being used up, she started to try to rush to her point, which I think made her a little bit nervous. It caused her to stumble a little bit, and I really think it affected the overall delivery. I feel like she started to lose her messaging because she was realizing that her time was running out. So she was trying to wrap it up and trying to reach her conclusion. But I feel like because of that, she sort of lost her direction and lost the power of her messaging. Brazil was asked about countries who don't have female leaders and what would you say to them and how would you convince them that you should or you could have female leaders, essentially. And she had this really, really great message of encouragement for young women. And she said that I think that we don't see more of these female leaders just because women aren't encouraged in the same way that boys are encouraged. And that's a really, really great point, honestly. But she had a wonderful message. I thought she spoke so beautifully here, and I loved this answer. Next, she was asked about mental health, and she got to speak freely about this, and I thought it was amazing. She talked about reducing the stigma. Let's normalize talking about mental health issues so that we can encourage people to go out and get help for things like anxiety and depression, and that you don't have to go through these things alone and that we can do them together. And I think this probably was my favorite answer. I thought that it was said with so much compassion and grace, and it was just a really beautiful message that she shared. And to me, it just really struck me, and I personally loved it. The judge referenced Zosie's answer last year, and she talked about leadership in her final answer, and basically they were asking her how she would facilitate leadership for young women. And she first referenced that she grew up in a family of young girls, and then she also talked about her organization, but then I felt like the answer started to get a little bit generic towards the end, and I feel like that is what affected her placement. Next, she was asked to speak on global poverty, and she talked about the poverty levels raising to 23% during the pandemic in the Dominican, and I think that that was a very personalized statement for her country, and it didn't really address global poverty, but that she also talked about being a representative of her country, and that it was this opportunity, I forgot exactly what she said, but basically to bring tourism or awareness to her country. And I felt like she didn't answer the question directly, and that's what resulted in her placement. She was asked what she would say to women who are experiencing sexual or domestic abuse, and she had this really, really great answer, really great messaging about that she's one of them, and that she became the survivor and the hero of her own story, and that you can do that too. And her message is to not let anyone silence you in this, because you are very strong. And I think it was beautiful. She got the audience going. She spoke very passionately here. So we'll talk more on that in a second. She was asked to speak about climate change next, and I think that this was a good answer. Once again, she got the audience going. But what I felt like happened in this answer is that she started to become very, very passionate. She had the crowd on her side, and this affected the way that she delivered the answer in terms of her body language. And that, I believe, is the difference between her and Mexico in these performances. And I think that that is what affected the rankings here, because during the show they mentioned that Miss Universe is a global ambassador. Although it can be great to get passionate while you're speaking, Miss Universe is going to still be asked a lot of difficult questions during her year or face potentially tough interviewers, and she has to be able to maintain that poise and grace and not let anything get a rise out of her. And I think that that's a quality that we see in a lot of Miss Universes. They always have that poise, that grace under pressure. They're always rising above and not letting anything really get under their skin or show that it gets under their skin. And I feel like because she was so passionate about this, that it affected the body language of it, and that in turn affects how judges view her communication skills. Let's talk about the placements for a minute. So if you take into consideration the contestant's confidence on stage, her poise and her elegance while she's speaking, her physical body language as well as facial expression and her tone, when I consider all of that, I feel like Mexico was scored as the average, like the most well-rounded if you take all of those things into consideration, and I think that's what resulted in the placements. So right here, Dominican Republic, I believe that she had a more generic answer and she wasn't as direct as other contestants were. India, I believe that she lost her messaging at the end of that second question, and that really affected her overall presentation. She stumbled a little bit there, and things are down to the nitty-gritty at this point, so they're really paying attention. They're really scrutinizing. Peru, like I said, had some really great answers, strong answers. The audience loved it, but I think that because of her passion as she was speaking, it affected her physical body language, which is still an element of communication. In fact, it's a really big part of communication. And then Brazil, also very quality answers here, and just really for me head to head with Mexico in the way that she answered them. So I feel like in a way that's a coin flip. And then Mexico right here, she always had a positive message. She remained poised under pressure, which is a trademark of any Miss Universe. She's absolutely stunning, friends. Just consider that she was first runner-up at Miss World, also like Catriona was. That's something that I've talked about in other episodes. So do not underestimate her. I mentioned this right before the end too. I said that I think a lot of people are forgetting about her, but I have not, and I still think she's a strong competitor. And I think she's gonna do a phenomenal job this year as Miss Universe. I know that a lot of people were very upset at the results, but I would encourage you to go back and scrutinize all of those elements and just kind of see how the judges could come to this result. And let's have more understanding for the contestants and recognize, first of all, how incredible all of them were, but let's still congratulate our new Miss Universe. I think that just because a lot of people's favorites might not have won, or Mexico wasn't really predicted as much as other contestants to win the competition, it does not mean that she's not deserving of the crown. I think she's going to be a beautiful title holder this year, and I think she's been doing an excellent job already with her media interviews. And before I wrap all of this up, I cannot not mention Olivia Culpo's reactions. They were hilarious. Olivia's face was basically what everyone was thinking. And I think that it was a really emotional time in the audience. Like I said, it's a whole different feeling when you're actually there and you have the influence of the crowd and them cheering. And by the way, Mexico, oh my gosh, did she have a following. Wow, watch my vlogs of the show and listen to people cheering for her, singing to her, calling out at her. I could not believe the type of support that she had this year. I would say it sounded like more support than even the fans from Thailand and the Philippines. It was between Puerto Rico, Peru, and Mexico for all the fans that were cheering for them. I felt like they were cheering the loudest and the audience was loving them. And I also think sometimes too that can help to influence the judges. The judges are kind of hearing that and going like, wow, what a fan favorite she is. And Mexico definitely had the crowd on her side. Also, I was really sad when people started to boo when Peru was announced as second runner-up, and I get it. I get that people are displeased and they disagree with the ranking, but at the same time, I feel like it does a disservice to the other queens, and it really takes away from what they did and what they accomplished. And I know that your favorite's out, but when that happens, find someone new to cheer for, find someone new to root for, and just continue to encourage the contestants, and don't take away from that moment of excitement for the other young women that are left on that stage that also worked really hard to be up there. It's a really, really tough choice at any pageant, but especially this year when these women were so phenomenal. And I think they were also so phenomenal because of extended reigns. Many of them had a lot more time to prepare for this international competition. So they were phenomenal. Congratulations to our new Miss Universe. I cannot wait to follow her year. I have more episodes coming out. I have another vlog I'll be releasing. Actually, I have a few vlogs. And I still have some other Miss Universe content that I want to share with you guys. So please keep up with that. If you are subscribed and you have the notifications bell clicked, then you will know when all those new episodes come out. Thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope you had a lot of fun this year in the Miss Universe season. I can't wait to start all the content for 2021. Let's get going, friends. Love you all so, so much, and I hope you come back for lots more content very soon. Also, don't forget to let me know what you thought of the show, who your favorites were, and who you think maybe is going to be on the radar for next year, because people are already starting to talk about that. I want to hear your thoughts.